PR Connections Radio presents. This podcast is brought to you by LifeWave. Ready to elevate your wellness game? Meet X39 from LifeWave.com. This game-changing patch uses phototherapy to stimulate your skin, enhancing strength and stamina by channeling your body's innate energy. Simply apply it to harness infrared heat, naturally boosting your vitality. Want to learn more? Visit www.lifewave.com/VernD and step into a healthier, more active lifestyle today.
Welcome back to Breaking the Silence, Beyond the Boundaries, where bold voices rise and limits fall. Now, I'm your host, Gail Larson, and I'm excited to kick off our first guest of episode 2. Now, if you remember in season 1, we focused on finding the courage to use our voices, but this season we are starting with a much deeper question. What are you ready to say now that maybe you weren't ready to say before? And today's conversation brings that question to life. So I am joined by former Sergeant Steve Adams, who will be sharing stories he's held back, but now ready to bring forward. So Steve, thank you so much for being here. Now,
Thank you.
Tell us a little more about you. Did you always want to go into law enforcement, and maybe what inspired you?
Well, that's a good question. And so I don't know. I don't know what happened, but when I was a little kid, I always knew that I wanted to be a police officer. In fact, I used to always tell my mother, I'm going to be a police officer when I grow up. And I think what also contributed to that was I had a neighbor who lived across the street, and Gail, you might remember him, John Walker. He was a deputy sheriff, and he used to come home in uniform all the time. And I thought to myself, that's what I want to do. And then I had another neighbor, Cornelius Cooper, who was a Los Angeles police officer, and he also inspired me. And of course, I went with the Los Angeles Police Department. I came on the job in 1977, and that was the beginning of my career.
Yep. And, it's just one of those things that law enforcement is definitely a calling. Not necessarily everyone is cut out to do that kind of work, but when you know it, you know it. And you have reminded me, too, of a friend of mine. You probably remember Margaret.
Yes.
And her dad.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Her dad was captain, wasn't he?
Commander.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have all those levels, but
Yeah.
He was definitely an inspiration to his whole community.
Absolutely.
In terms of the levels that he rose to. So shout out, to him as well. So thinking about our question about what we are inspired to talk about today, what do you think makes a person move from, I couldn't ever say this, to, I think I'm ready to say this now? Do you think it's courage, or maybe we just become reckless in our old age? Well, speaking for me anyway.
Well, I think there's several things. Courage definitely is one of them, but I think everyone has their own barometer as to when they say something, when they're ready to say something. It's a level of comfort, it's courage. There are a number of things that come into play that make people say, I couldn't say this before, but I think I'm ready to say it now. Yeah.
Yep. And that whole thing is just really fascinating to me. And you and I have known each other for decades. We've seen a lot, we've done a lot, and much of which we definitely haven't wanted to talk about, that's for sure. And so when we connected earlier, you shared something that you've been kind of holding on to. Well, a number of things. Something that feels, that you kind of need to express right now. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and why you feel like it's the time.
Well, it's not that I'm expressing it right now. I did express it sometime after the incident happened. There was this long delay in expressing it. And if I can go into some detail about it, this is while I was on the Los Angeles Police Department. And another officer who will remain unnamed that I was working with, we were patrolling an area in South LA. And of course, it used to be called South Central LA, but now South LA. And there was a young kid walking down the street, and he held an item in his hand. And, little kids, they see the police, they either wave at you or they act like they're pointing a gun at you. Well, in this case, this kid acted like he was pointing a gun at my partner and I, and clearly he did not have a gun. Clearly. Well, my partner decided to come to a screeching halt, jumped out of the car, drew his gun on this kid. And when I say kid, I'm talking about a kid of probably 8, 9 years old.
No.
And my partner proceeds to prone this kid out in a puddle of water. And I guess someone's sprinklers or something had been on. But the end result of that was the whole neighborhood emptied out. They were screaming and hollering. I had to put out an officer needs help call. A sergeant eventually arrived and took care of the situation. But the only time that I really spoke about was talking to the sergeant and explaining what happened. But I really wanted to say more about it. And that opportunity didn't come until probably at least 20 years later. Ironically, right after the Rodney King riots, the officer happened, well, he had since retired. And then he went on a local radio show, and they were talking about, he was representing a law firm, and he was talking about how people could call into this law firm and talk about incidents of what they felt might have been excessive force by police officers. I was shocked to hear it was this officer who I worked with who had prone this kid out in the water, now supposedly representing people who may have had an encounter with excessive force. And so this was an open forum show on a radio station. I was trying to call into the radio station because I thought this is my opportunity to speak publicly about the experience I had working with this officer. And I was just shocked at the fact that he was trying to portray himself as now a someone who's going to help people
Right.
who experience excessive force. So at any rate, I tried to call into the station. I couldn't get in, but I kept calling the number, and I did eventually get a hold of the radio show's host, and I told her about what I experienced with this officer. And she said that she would never have him on the show again. But, and I hate to keep going on, but there's a little,
No, this is fine.
a little more to this. And then once I learned about the law firm that he worked with, I called that firm a few days later, and lo and behold, guess who answered the phone? The officer I worked with.
Oh my.
And I went into this long thing without going into a whole lot of detail. I just told him that I was shocked that he was on a radio show trying to portray himself as a friend of people who experience excessive force. And I reminded him of the incident that I experienced with him, and he was shocked, absolutely shocked, because I told him my idea of coming on the police department was to come on and do good things for the community. And the experience that I had with him showed me something entirely different. And anyway, he wanted me to get together with me and have lunch with me, and I told him I wasn't going to have any part of it. And I also let him know that I told the radio show's host about my experience with him. So that was my experience.
And do you think he was shocked because you actually spoke out about what you believed?
Yes, yes. Shocked at that. Shocked at the fact that I was able to locate him, and I had this conversation with him, and it was not a friendly conversation. I can assure you that. I let him know exactly how I feel. Something that I wasn't able to do back then, for whatever reason. I wasn't able to do it back then, and I think there is actually a reason, and that's because there's this. You can fall into a situation where you're now ostracized by the officer you were working with, because he has more seniority. I'm brand new on the job. And then there's this thing where within the police department or law enforcement, where if the word gets out that you didn't back your partner, now you are no good officer, and it can go very bad for you. So, it took some years to get up the courage to come forward and say something.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. A lot of times, that's the reason why people hesitate to bring things forward, because of the backlash that they
Mhm,
anticipate happening for all
mhm,
the reasons that you just stated.
mhm,
The fact
mhm.
that you might be new, or it involves people at higher seniority, is just what the fallout is going to be.
Yeah,
Um,
yes, that's true.
so in the past, I personally have been hesitant to express, my opinions, or even express my dreams or my desires, probably because I'm afraid about, what people would actually think, or just the fact that people might think I'm crazy. Like, what the heck is she thinking?
Yeah, yeah,
Especially right now at this time of my life, when people are just kind of, you know, retired and just laying back and watching the insides of their eyelids. But what
uh-huh.
are some of the reasons why you think people might hold back their opinions, their dreams, for perspectives, when they know that it's meaningful?
Well, as I said before, it's that feeling of you could be ostracized, you could be thought of as or labeled as you're not a team player. Um, uh, you're not part of the group. You don't fit in because of the things that you might say. And so that's why I think a lot of people hold back on expressing their feelings or saying something that should be said.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we think from either a personal or a professional standpoint, has there been a time where you have been encouraged to either speak your mind or even move forward in your career, and you thought, well, maybe this isn't the time?
Mm,
Or the reason that they give you for you wanting to move forward? What has there been a time where you have thought about where your career was going, and somebody may have encouraged you in one way or the other, and you might have held back? Or
absolutely, absolutely. And I can point to a time where I was working in patrol. I was a sergeant in patrol, and a very close friend of mine had approached me and said, you might want to think about promoting again, and which would mean that I would no longer be working in the field. It would be an inside administrative job, and it would be a promotion. and I was having so much fun working in patrol because that's all I ever wanted to do, to be a street cop. But I I listened to him, and I thought about it, and I went on and I took the interview for that promotion in that inside position, and uh, I was able to get that job. I was accepted, and it was probably the best move that I ever made for a number of reasons.
Exactly. And so therefore the outcome was not necessarily what you had expected, but it was better than what you had anticipated as far as that was concerned.
Absolutely. That was the beginning of probably some of the best time that I had on the job. It it helped me. The word that I'm looking for.
Expand, grow.
Yeah. It was growth. It was growth for me because had I stayed in patrol, it had just been doing the same old thing day in and day out. But with this promotion, working inside, being in an administrative position, it got me to see an entirely different view of the police department.
And you bring back a memory for me. Some of my boldest moves have been because somebody said, "Have you ever thought about doing XYZ?"
Yeah.
And I remember there was a manager that I was reporting to at the time had said, "You know what? I am getting ready to move to another position, and I really think that maybe you should consider it." And then I was thinking, I'm perfectly happy where I am right now. Maybe what I could do is just shadow you for a while to see if I would like it, which
Uh,
seemed reasonable to me. And she's like, no, these opportunities only come once in a blue moon. Either you can put up or shut up.
Shut up. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I did. And even though I thought that it would be uncomfortable or I would miss what I was doing now, it really did set the path for me
Hmm.
to pursue leadership. So you just never know. You just
Right.
never know.
Right. Right.
So, you just never know when you think to yourself, maybe I should avoid doing this. And you realize that it was the thing to do.
Yes. Yes. So
So,
true. So
go
true.
ahead. Pardon me?
I said so true.
Now, here's a question for you.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever finally said something that you've been holding in, and then afterwards you thought, why did I wait so long to hold back? And it's not necessarily professionally, but why was it so hard?
Mm, that's a good question. And yeah, that's happened to me a number of times, both in my personal life, my professional life. And I think, at least for me, the reason that I held back was because it might, in most cases, something that's uncomfortable to discuss, and you either don't want to hurt the person's feelings, or you don't want to say the wrong thing, and so there's a process, at least that I go through, and that's um, taking small steps towards getting to the point where you're comfortable enough to say what it is you want to say. And so um, I, I think that that's it. I'm just being cautious. Um, I'm being careful. I'm strategizing on how I want to get to saying what it is I want to say.
Yep, I hear you 100%. I kind of want to go back to something we talked about when you first started talking about your story about calling into the radio station.
Yes.
And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because many of our listeners may not even relate to something like that because of social media these days. If you have something on your mind that you want to say about something, it's only a matter of seconds before you can express that opinion, good, bad, or indifferent. Um, when you talked about the Rodney King riots, which many of our listeners may not have any reference to that, but they may know more about the George Floyd incident.
Yes.
So, can you reflect on, since you were around for both incidents, just the difference in how it felt, or if there was a difference, or what did it strike you the same way as the Rodney King riots that were set off because of the injustice that was done then, compared to the injustice definitely that was done with George Floyd and those riots? Does it? How do you feel about any of that, being from law enforcement?
Well, I was around for the Rodney King incident, but I was not still on the department when George Floyd happened.
Of course.
But I think that they were so similar. It was very similar. Um, I can tell you that I was very disappointed to see how law enforcement responded to both incidents. I had certain feelings about the Rodney King incident. I had certain feelings about the George Floyd incident. But both of them, I thought that it was just extremely unnecessary. Now, this is my personal opinion now. Extremely unnecessary and extremely unprofessional. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And, the fact that, when you said that you were able to call into the radio station as far as the incident that had been with that young kid, it was good that you were able to do that and to, in essence, get it off your chest and really make a difference, because I'm sure it made that person you were working with think twice before trying to make himself look differently
Yeah.
than he actually was. And then these days, we can express our opinions in any way, shape, form, or fashion, which can be a good thing, and it could necessarily be detrimental as well.
It's so true.
So, as we approach the closing of our show, for someone who is listening, there's a couple of things I want to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is, do you have any advice for someone who might be considering first going into law enforcement during these troubled times?
Oh, absolutely. There's a number of things, and oftentimes I'm asked that question about going into law enforcement, and here's what I will tell you, because a lot of people say, well, they're afraid, and that they may have to get involved in a physical confrontation with someone. They may get involved in a situation where you have to use lethal force. And here's what I always tell people. I truly believe that 90% of the job of law enforcement is being able to communicate with people. 100%. It's all about communicating with people, how you interact with people. I don't care what the differences are, whether you're dealing with what ethnicity the person is, what their sexual preference is, what kind of disability they may have. It's all about communication. And if you communicate to people, you can get through to just about anyone. And what I want to say is, when I'm talking about communicating, one of the most difficult times to communicate with someone is when they've gone through what I refer to as a significant emotional event. It may be the death of a loved one. It may be something awfully terrible has happened to someone. It may be that person who's autistic, which is a whole different level of communication, but it all comes back to communication. 100, I said 100%, 110% communication. And
Absolutely.
being empathetic, having compassion, and listening to people. That's all a part of communication. You just can't do all the talking. You have to listen. And lastly, treating people with respect. You put handcuffs on people, and I'm going to be very open with you and honest with you. There was a time when officers would, and I mean, they'd put somebody in custody, have them in the back seat of the police car, and they would use that opportunity to get in a couple of shots. And I'm talking about beating up on someone.
Yeah.
If you put handcuffs on someone, even the worst person, all they want is to be treated with respect. You don't have to demean them. You don't have to put your hands on them. You've already taken their freedom away. What more can you take from them once you do that? So it's about respect and communication.
Yeah, that is so powerful. Communication and empathy and compassion. And, you know, so many terrible things have happened because people just fail to listen, like you said,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, and then the second part of that question is, you know, for people who feel that inside they're just waiting to express something, what would you say to them right now?
Okay. If there's something on your chest, you want to get something off of your chest. If there's something that's eating away at you, there's some sort of an issue that needs to be resolved. Here's what I will tell you. If you do nothing, if you say nothing, it is 100% that issue will never, ever, ever get resolved. Conversely, if you say something, if you do something, there's a 50% chance that it will get resolved. In other words, 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing.
Absolutely. And that, to our listeners, is something that you definitely need to remember. You reminded me of something, I think it might have been Wayne Gretzky said, that you will always miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I am so thrilled that you agreed to come on and talk with us about your life and your experiences and in law enforcement as well, and to help our listeners to have the courage to speak up and speak out about things that maybe they weren't comfortable doing before. So for everyone out there, this has been Breaking the Silence, Beyond the Boundaries, where our bold voices rise and limits fall. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Time. Bye-bye.
Classy Communications provides public relations and marketing solutions for businesses, professionals, and nonprofit organizations. They can deliver the true meaning of your business with press releases, social media marketing, web development, email marketing, book publishing, and much more. Wherever your potential clients are, they can help you connect with them. Visit classycommunications.net to learn more about their suite of services that can help your business stand out from the rest. Classy Communications is your solution for business success. PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.